Welcome to the Bret Boone podcast. I'm Bret Boone, and today on the program, I'm joined by a two-time All-Star, won a Silver Slugger in 2004, member of the Milwaukee Wall of Honor, currently special assistant to the San Diego Padres, and he's a we attend off-season gatherings, and we're professional. What is it, Lo? Give it to me.
College?
No, fantasy campers. We're
Oh,
professional
yeah, fantasy
fantasy
camp.
camp. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Loretta. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me, Booney. Good to see you, man, in all your glory. You look good.
All right, you see it every day. This division opening this season, and when I say division, I'm talking about the National League West. To open the season, I personally thought this was probably going to be the strongest division in baseball with Arizona, what they did a year ago. The improvements they've made in the offseason. So far, they've been a disappointment. I thought San Fran was going to be better. Snell moving down the freeway. He's been plagued by injuries. I believe he's hurt again and on the IL again. They've had injuries up and down that roster. Padres, a year ago, disappointing as could possibly be, made a lot of wheeling and dealing in the offseason. So far, so good. They've been playing well as of late. And obviously the Dodgers, they're atop the division. They kind of put together a super team in the offseason. But your thoughts. Is it the toughest division in baseball? What do you see in the early goings?
I think it's one of the tougher divisions in baseball, Booney, like you mentioned. However, yeah, a couple teams off to some suspect starts. I think Arizona, everybody expected to kind of have a springboard season from last year with the World Series. Giants have had a lot of injuries, to like you mentioned. The Padres, we've been pretty inconsistent. Played much better on the road than at home, which is kind of strange. Our bigger name guys, Machado, Tatis, now Bogarts is hurt, really haven't hit their stride this year. If it wasn't for, a guy like Profar and Cronenworth kind of having a bounce back year, we'd be in big trouble. Now, we have our injuries as well. You saw that Darvish and Musgrove both went on the DL over the last couple of days. So we're gonna have to dig deep into our rotation, some of our depth, probably from the minor leagues to get a guy like Mazer or somebody to come up and have some starts. But I like the team in general, and we can get in more into it. I think the addition of Luis Arraez has been awesome. I mean, that guy is just an outlier. He's a freak in terms of putting the ball in play. But we really haven't hit for much power, so that's a little concerning. But I think everybody's chasing the Dodgers. I think the rest of us, whether we want to admit it or not, are really just chasing the wild card at this point.
I think that's a great assessment, an honest assessment, because I look at the Dodgers team, and they've had a stronghold in that division for a while now. And I'm always wondering how it's perceived outside. Like, no, we're equal with the Dodgers. It's kind of they are top of the hill. I mean, they've hit a little bit of a skid. They're getting it back going now. But I look at the Dodgers and they've got so much depth. The way they found that loophole this offseason and were able to get Ohtani and Yamamoto. It seems like it goes for days, that rotation. And then, you got Kershaw, he's not Kershaw when he was 30 years old, but he's still Clayton Kershaw. He's going to come back later in the season and he's the sixth starter. So when you got Kershaw waiting in the wings as a sixth starter, you're pretty deep. Talk to me a little bit about Arizona. A year ago, I think you were as surprised as anybody. I think anybody that says, "Oh yeah, I thought they were going to go to the World Series," I don't think they're being honest with you. It was an unbelievable run. I watched it. I was impressed. And I saw the moves they made this offseason. I think they improved their ball club. But like the other teams in the division have been riddled with injuries again. You've got Kelly to start the season. He's out. Now Gallen's down. They don't have much left in that rotation. Talented offense, but Corbin Carroll, the rookie of the year a year ago, he's got that sophomore jinx going. Talk to the Arizona. How much have you seen Arizona so far this year? Do you see a difference? What's going on with them?
Yeah, I think we've only seen them once so far, but yeah, I think it starts with Carroll. Last year he was the engine to that team. It was pretty amazing, and it looks like the league's made some adjustments on him, so he'll have to make that adjustment like every player has to do. I think everything went right for them last year, and we had a year like that. Well, not really a year like that, but we had that deep run in the playoffs in 2022, and we beat the Dodgers and kind of slayed the dragon. Everybody was talking about that, and I think it just goes to show you in this format, it's much like the NCAA tournament. You just got to get in the tournament, right? You got to get in the playoffs, and then whoever gets hot at the time, especially in these 5-game series. I'd like to see them go to all 7-game series if they think they can find a way to do it. I think that's more fair, but it's all about the spread at the end, and they got hot at the right time. So we'll see. I mean, they're certainly not out of it, and they got to be able to build. They must feel some confidence coming off of last year. So I wouldn't write them off at all, but it's tough. It's tough to repeat, especially when everything goes well the year before, and then you start off a little shaky the next year.
You talk about that postseason. I want to get your take on that. We played obviously very the same generation. You played a little later than me. I got to the big leagues a little earlier than you, but we crossed paths for 10 or 12 years. Um, a part of me now, Low, and as I get a little bit older, I kind of tend to not make a judgment right out of bed. Just kind of, all right, I'll keep an open mind. And as I've watched this format mature over the years, and now we're to 12 teams in the postseason. Yeah, the old school part of myself, the purist in me, always likes keep the game as it's been for as long as it can. It's Major League Baseball for a reason, and I've always been hesitant to change. Now, in recent years, I've actually been pleasantly surprised at some of the changes and the progressive changes Major League Baseball's made. But when it goes to the playoffs, as a player, I can't stand the new format because I've always thought the grind. You mentioned the 7-game postseason. If we could get to that, I'm with you on that because it shows the depth of a team. And in this current format, a lot of teams you don't have to get to that fourth starter. But I want to get to where there's 7 games, and you better have 4 quality starters, and we're going to see the true strength of a team. I like that 162 game grind because when it's over, that guy standing, that's the best of the lot. Today, there's a lot of seats at the table in the postseason. And as a player, I just think, man, anybody can get into the playoffs now. It's easier than it's ever been, 12 out of 30 teams. But the fan in me now, the guy sitting back watching these games on a daily basis, I really like the new format. I think it's fun. I think it keeps cities involved a lot longer. Where in past years, September, a lot of these cities that are still in the hunt to get to the playoffs are talking football. They've already moved on. Now it's all baseball down the stretch. You get more people involved, and like you said, I can't pick this. You try to sit down and break down the postseasons in 2024, this generation, but it's virtually impossible. And you're seeing it year after year after year. Teams you would never expect move on. So your take, so I'm going to go back to as a player, I hate it. As a fan and a 55-year-old man right now that's on this side of the microphone, I really like it. I think it's exciting. I think it's great for the game of baseball.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think it's a great point that you said. You got to sit back and see what the changes are going to be. I feel that way also in some of the changes in the game in terms of the pitch clock, the throwovers. I think the initial reaction for guys like you and me is like, why are they messing with the game? Why are they changing it? And I think it's been pretty much successful. I think 2.5 hour game, 240, 245 at the most is pretty darn good and pretty good for the spectator. Yeah, I think as far as the postseason goes, and it's very difficult now being on the business side. All the revenue models are based on 81 home games. So if you said, okay, let's cut it down to 154. Let's add a week to the postseason where you do 7 games. How's that going to work with all the other teams and the revenue that they're counting on for those extra 3 or 4, 5 home games? That's a consideration. A lot of things to think about. But for me, as a spectator, as a fan, there's nothing like a playoff game of any kind. And the more playoff games you can have, I think the better for the sport, better for the interest, and I think, better for the industry. So we'll see. I like the fact that Theo is in the commissioner's office really coming up with some great ideas. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the next commissioner of baseball, quite honestly. We'll see how that shakes out. But I do think, for the most part, the changes in the game have been pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think so too. And I didn't even go into low. Here's what I'm most impressed about of the and I won't touch on this for a long time, but the pitch clock, obviously, yeah, I was kind of from the vein of, listen, we're the only major, major sport that doesn't operate on a clock. So no, we can't have that. All of a sudden, like you said, for a guy like you that has to go to a lot of these games, it's kind of nice knowing, honey, I'll be home I can pretty much predict when I'll be home. In the past, we have no idea. But the thing that caught me off guard that I thought was great was the two disengagements. Now, down the road, Low, I think they're going to have to change that, because now you're creating base stealers again, like when we played. The game, we're talking about stealing bases. What Acuna did a year ago, going 40-70, that's a buzz in baseball. That's getting people involved. So what I realized was, it's not that it's fair for an advanced base runner. It really isn't, to the catcher or the pitcher, but it encourages running again, which we were getting away from. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. So yeah, I love the new rules and what they were put in place for. They weren't put in place for to make it easier. They were put there to encourage the running game, encourage getting in the box and putting the ball in play. I think these are all great things. And it's going to be interesting where it goes as we go down the line. I also like your postseason thoughts of, okay, there's 81 game that we plan on revenue. Maybe if you go to 154, which it's going to have its own arguments now, how the records are going to be treated. But as far as a revenue thing, maybe you'd have to take those extra playoff games. You go to the 7 games, and those first round, it all goes in the pool, and that's split amongst the teams that didn't make. I don't know. I think there's so many different things that could possibly go on. I have no idea what they're going to do, but constantly thinking, throwing stuff against the wall. I think the game is getting better from an entertainment standpoint.
I would agree. Yeah, absolutely. One comment about the disengagement rule is, I've been surprised. You rarely see a disengagement violation in terms of like the third pickoff where you don't get the guy. If you've got an elite base runner, as soon as you pick over twice, the guy feels free and fancy free, takes a huge lead. Why not pick off again? Even if you don't get him, he's probably going to steal the base anyway. I think you'd pick more guys off in that scenario. I haven't seen it much, and I'm surprised by that. So anyway, that's just a thought I had on that. But yeah,
Because their pitcher's low, and they're scared, and they're worried about the hitter.
I know, and they don't want to balk and all that stuff. But
Right.
I think in a big spot, if you've got Acuna on there, and you pick over twice, and he feels confident you're not coming over, you could get him on that third one. And if you don't, who cares? He's going to steal it anyway.
Right.
So anyway, we digress, but yeah, and I also thought, like, the bigger bases, what are they doing there? What's the point of that? And that's just, nobody even thinks about it anymore. And I
Right.
guess the bases have always been kind of different shapes over the years anyway. So, yeah, but I credit Major League Baseball, credit the PO and the commissioner for thinking progressively.
When I've touched on injuries quite a bit, and it seems like every day another pitcher's going down. We're going to get to your Padres in a second here, but Darvish and Musgrove, obviously, two of the guys that top that rotation that are going to be a huge part of that run for the Padres if they're going to make a run this year. I don't think you can do it without them. But it's across baseball everywhere. We saw Blake Snell. He just went down again. There's too many to mention. How many have gone down? Garrett Cole of a year ago hasn't thrown a pitch. I think coming up here shortly, he's going to get back on the mound at the big league level. But there's too many to mention. In today's day and age, with all the injuries and everything, we can kind of forecast now. And a lot of people are arguing why the injuries. I have my own theory. I'm sure you have a theory. How many starting pitchers does a Major League Baseball team need going into the season? Because the injuries are going to happen. I don't think it's a matter of if, it's when.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably go as high as 10, probably, to get through a season. I'll tell you a story, interesting. This happened in my career too. The one year I played for the Red Sox, we went into spring training and I think they thought they had a glut of starting pitching. It was Papelbon, it was Schilling, it was Beckett, all these guys, and they had Bronson Arroyo as the sixth starter. Well, they thought, oh, that's just going to be redundant. He's not going to pitch much, and they traded him for I'm thinking of Franmil Reyes, but another guy like that, a big, strong slugger. Anyway, long story short, you know, Beckett went down, Schilling went down. We needed Arroyo. Arroyo went on and had a great year with the Reds that year. And it was like, no, you need more starting depth than that. That's even increased now, 20 years later. Yeah, I think it's at least 10, 8 to 10. And, as far as the theories, we've heard a lot of different things. I just think it's the cost of doing business. Throwing a baseball at 99 miles an hour, 95 miles an hour, 94 on average, it's just not a natural thing to do. There's so much stress on these ligaments that it's not a question of if, it's when with these pitchers. So either you kind of just accept that and build that in the model, but all our analytics people have not been able to figure out throw more, throw less, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know where they go on that. I'd like to hear your take on it, but I'm not sure.
Well, here's what I think. I think it starts when these kids are 12 years old
Yeah.
because it's different than when we were growing up. When we grew up, and I'm sure you played multiple sports, and it wasn't baseball. And yeah, baseball's probably your primary, like it was mine. We ended up making careers out of it, but there was football, there was basketball, and I loved all three, especially as a young man. When you're
Mhm.
8, 9, 10, 11 years old. Nowadays, my theory is everybody's going to be they're going to pick a sport and they're just going to exasperate it. And all of a sudden, little Johnny's pitching on that 11-year-old team. There are rules in place for little Johnny to throw 60 pitches. And if he exceeds that, he can't pitch till, let's say, next Thursday. This is all just, uh, hypotheticals. Little Johnny on Sunday goes and pitches for his other travel ball team that he's on, and he's throwing another 50, 60 pitches. I think the exhaustion, the kids at a young age just playing baseball year around, I think it's finally coming to fruition. I think there's always been injuries in the game, but I think we're seeing them at a higher level than we've ever seen. And I think it's this current generation that started when they were 10, 11, 12. I think it's coming to fruition now because Tommy John's, and I'm sure you know about this, Tommy John's, they started out, the majority of Tommy John surgeries was done for what? Big league pitchers. Then it went, oh, now the most are done for big league and minor league pitchers. Now the majority of Tommy Johns are done for the youth. There's a reason, there's something behind that. Um, you know, there's plenty of theories out there. I talked to my trainer for years and years with the Seattle Mariners. He has a theory about in between starts, throwing off flat ground, throwing off a mound. I've heard theories that in the minor leagues they baby these guys so much, and then they're brought to the big leagues, they're expected to max out, and that's a reason for injuries. But my simple one is I think it starts at the youth level, the 10, 11, and 12-year olds abusing their arms at a young age, and I think the ones that are gifted enough and move on to the next level, I think it all comes full circle. That's my take, whatever it's worth.
Yeah, no, that's certainly part of it. There's no doubt that these kids are throwing a lot at a young age, and they're playing on multiple teams.
Drive line.
Yeah, I was talking to Jamie Kotze the other night, and she was talking about Trey, Mark's son, and I think he's playing on 4 different travel teams this summer. Now he's not a pitcher, but it's like, geez, that's you got to be careful with burnout. I mean, for these kids. And to use an example, I read Nick Saban talks about in his book. He talks about he rarely recruited a guy that only played football. He wanted the basketball player, the baseball player, and the football player. And I think we've created, and the parents feel like if you're not playing in all these travel teams, you're not going to be seen. And I think that's untrue. If you're a good player and you're gifted and you're good enough to be a pro, and you're playing some baseball, I mean, you're going to be found, right? You don't have to be on every showcase everywhere. The scouts will find you. They don't miss on guys anymore.
Right. The technology, they got it down to a science. And
Yeah.
my agent told me that before the draft. He said, Booney, they've got it down. It's rare that they miss on a draft pick. Whereas in the past, it was strictly, kind of, hey, I think this guy's going to be the guy. They've got it down to a little more scientific now. And I agree with you there. I also think, Lo, the way we did it past generations playing football, it made you a better you learn things on the football field that translate to the baseball field. You play hoops, it translates to the football field. Not everybody's going to be a major league baseball player. Not everybody's going to be an NFL player, but somebody's got to do it. So I think probably the greatest NFL players probably played a little hoops, probably played some baseball growing up. I
Mm-hmm.
think you talk about the burnout as a young kid. Yeah, that can be a factor. Now I think there's exceptions too. I think the Bryce Harpers of the world were born to play baseball, and that's all they did. That's one in a zillion,
Yep.
but if you treat the masses that way, I think not only is it a detriment to the kids, because I think it really curbs their childhood, because
Mm-hmm.
realistically, these kids aren't going to the big leagues. They really
No.
aren't, you know. But when you put
Yeah.
all that blood, sweat, and tears, now you got a 22-year-old kid looking at dad going, "Way to ruin my childhood. Give me this fake I'm going to the big league story." When really, I think you're born a pro. I think you're born a pro. You got a certain amount of ability when you're born, and the ones that really tap into that and have the mind to do it, they're the ones that make it at the highest level. But I don't think you're just born and go and turn yourself into a big leaguer. I don't care how many lessons you take. I don't care how many
Yep.
teams you play on. If you don't have a certain amount of ability, you're not a professional player. I guess that's just my take over the years watching this craziness. Because when I retired, me and Trevor, we took on those kids travel ball teams, and it wasn't the kids, it was the parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Hoffy coming up to me one day and saying, "Booney, are we doing something wrong?" Because kids kept quitting. We're giving them free access. We don't charge a dime. Uh, but if their son wasn't hitting third, fourth, playing short and pitching at the same time, he's moving on to greener pastures.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and think about it, like what we've created kind of these vigilantes, going back to the Kotze story, if he jumps in on a team and it's not really a team, it's just a bunch of guys that, oh, you're available, okay, come play. Whereas basketball, I mean, high school basketball to me was about as most fun. It's a team game, it's team oriented. Like I look back on those experiences and just I would have hate to have missed them. So yeah, I think the pendulum usually swings one way. I think maybe it's starting to come back a little bit to the middle, but we'll see.
Now working on the business side of things, front office. As a player, when you looked at the people in the front office, what have been the surprises for you? Now it's different than when we were playing. There's a lot more pieces moving. There's the
Mhm.
analytical department. But have there been any surprises for you working on this side of the ledger? And I know it's not your first time doing it, but from the player's perspective, your player's perspective to the actual job itself.
Yeah, it's a great question. As a player, as you know, like you really don't care and you really don't focus much on the business side at all. I mean, you might think about the player development side and all that kind of thing, but in terms of actually running a major league business and figuring out how to host 81 huge events like that, not to mention at Petco Park we have concerts all the time. They use it for a lot of other things as well. And it's been really a cool experience to see that side of the business, see how much goes into, developing relationships with corporate partners, for example, and corporate sponsorships, and then season tickets. And it's been fun to see, when I was with the Padres, we opened up Petco Park. So that was 20 years ago, 2004. And yeah, there was the buzz of the new ballpark, and we had pretty good crowds that year. And then for the next 10, 15, almost 20 years, it kind of fell off. The team wasn't great. The shine of Petco sort of rubbed off a little bit. Now it's back. I mean, you've been down there enough, Tony, to see we're averaging 40,000 fans a night. It's incredible. We have the second highest home attendance in all of Major League Baseball, just behind the Dodgers, who, by the way, have 55,000 seat capacity. So we're drawing more than the Yankees, which is just insane to me. And it's really a tribute to the leadership. I think you had Tom Seidler on your show recently. Him and Eric Grutner and a guy named Sergio Del Prado. These guys have just really done a fantastic job marketing the team, but also keeping Petco there's a mantra that they say, we want Petco never to look more than 5 years old. And they pour millions of dollars into it every year on upkeep. They just redid the park in the park, the Gallagher Square in the back, where now, general admission has gone from like 6,000 to 10,000, things like that. And I think also, whether you agree on on how they spent the money, I think going out and getting big stars and keeping them here for years to come has energized the fan base. People they love to cheer for the name on the back of the jersey as much as the name on the front. And, having Tatis and Machado and Bogarts and Darvish and Musgrove, Cronenworth, these guys, are going to be here long term. And I think it's resonated with the fans, and they know that the Padres are trying to win. It's not easy to win, no matter how much resources you have. I mean, you go back to the old Yankee teams of, the Don Mattingly era. They always spent the most money, but it wasn't until they really, had that core four come up and grow together that they kind of took off. But it's been cool, man. It's been really interesting, and like I said, Eric Grubner's been great to me. I'm in the leadership meetings. I'm around with different things, and just a small part of what's really become a pretty cool community asset and a community source of pride.
Yeah, and Tommy's done a great job working out or reaching out to the alumni. Like he said, I've been down to the ballpark several times. I'll tell you what I know you're doing a good job. The other day I came for when Aaron was in town for the Yankees series, and it was a packed house, and um, I brought mom and dad with me, so they're sitting up in the owner's suite. And my mom told me after the game, and she's a tough sell because she's been everywhere.
Sure.
And she said, Brett, man, that Petco Park, that's really a beautiful stadium. I said, Mom, it is pretty awesome, isn't it? She goes, it really is. I like a lot of ballparks. And she starts naming off her favorite ones. She goes, but that was really nice. So they do. You're right, Lo. They really do a nice job. You guys are doing a great job there from a fan standpoint, connecting the fan to the player, but connecting the fan to the team at the same time. And I think they are. Now it's their job to win and get to that postseason and one day hopefully win a World Series. I want to get to the Padres now. As we sit here on the Bret Boone podcast, this Padre team is in second place. They're a couple games above 500. But a couple big guys went down. We had Musgrove go down for a while. He wasn't right. He went down. He came back, pitched a couple decent games, pitched a good game against the Yankees most recently. And all of a sudden, he's back on the IL. Darvish, as everybody knows, pitched 25 scoreless innings in a row this year and then had back-to-back really tough outings. He's on the IL. Let's talk about this Padres rotation with the new additions of Cease, with King that came over in that Soto trade. Vasquez is going to have to play a pretty big role now. Your take, Mark Loretta's take on the Padres starting pitching as of now.
Yeah, obviously big hit with Darvish and Musgrove. The good news is I don't think either one is particularly serious. Darvish is dealing with a hamstring coming off of, I think he had a little bit of a neck issue. His mechanics are so sound. I don't expect him to miss more than the minimum amount of days. Joe's been dealing with some tricep tendonitis. They don't think anything's wrong, on the other side of the elbow. So he's as hard a worker as there is. Yeah, real encouraging to see his outing against the Yankees. I mean, I was a little worried about that outing, quite frankly. I mean, we hit the Yankees, not that they've been cold at all year, but I mean, they destroyed Darvish. We looked outclassed those first couple games for sure. But thank God, AJ Preller and the group made the trade for Cease at the end of spring training. He's been awesome. He's had just a couple of blips, but if he throws strikes, especially with that slider, he's about as good as it gets. He's pretty much a number one for just about any team. And then you mentioned King. I think King switching from the bullpen to the rotation has been a little bit of a challenge for him, but real cerebral guy. Pitched a great game yesterday in Kansas City. I think he's going to be very good once he kind of settles into this role, and he's got 3 or 4. That the sweeper is very good. He's got the two-seamer coming back against the righties. You know, and kind of the unsung hero of the staff right now has been this guy Matt Waldron, who's throws the knuckleball. Doesn't He's not a knuckleball pitcher per se. He's not like Wakefield where he throws it 90% of the time. He probably throws it 50% of the time. Can get it up there to 92, 93. A little bit of a breaking ball, but he's filled in the fifth spot and give us a lot of pretty quality innings. Occasionally if that knuckleball's not moving, he'll get whacked around, but that's a good guy to have for depth and it saves the bullpen at times. Vasquez pitched pretty well the other day in Kansas City. I think he was looked at as being one of the fifth starter coming out of spring training. He spent a little bit of time in the minor league, so hopefully he can step up. And the bullpen, has really kind of solidified itself. I mean, Jeremiah Estrada has been just a godsend. What a find! I mean, here's a guy who was, put on waivers by the Cubs. He struck out 13 straight batters just last week. I mean, you think about that. That's 4 1/3 innings. That would be like getting into the fifth inning and nobody's put the ball in play as a starter. It was pretty amazing. So with Suarez and Estrada at the back end, that moves everybody down a couple notches there in the pen. So not real concern there. So yeah, I think get through this couple week stretch without Darvish and Musgrove. Hopefully our offense, is hitting its stride. Arise, like I mentioned, has been great. I think Manny's starting to swing the bat a little better. Tatis is getting hot. Cronenworth has been good. So just got to get on a run. I mean, we lost a tough one yesterday where Suarez and Estrada weren't available at the back end. So
Right.
a blown save is rough. But we got the Angels coming up who've been down. So if we need to get some distance between 500. Let's get 5 or 10 games over. And then hit our stride. And you got to figure we'll play better at home. The sample size is still pretty small, but I think this team, should be right there in the end for a wild card, in my opinion.
I agree with you too. And when we go to the offense now, uh, solid, been solid defensively. I've been impressed just recently with the turn of events with Bogarts going down, and Cronenworth going back to his natural position, second base. He's a real good second baseman.
Yeah, he is.
And I talk and Lo, I've talked to you off camera quite a bit about having so many of those middle infielders and having so many shortstops on the field. Those guys have egos. We have egos. We were middle infielders, and when we're asked to play other positions, yeah, of course we'll do what's best for the team at the time. But when you're in your heyday and you're a middle infielder, and you ask to get to go, you're asked to go somewhere else. It's like, wait a minute, me? You don't think I'm as good as this guy? So I think it's a good problem to have, but at times it could be, man, you got too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah,
I really like to see Bogarts playing second or Cronenworth playing second base. I think he feels at home there, and I think you can get the most out of him when
yeah.
he's in his place. Anyway, that'll we'll see how that works out as time goes on. But go through that lineup real quick for me. What are the keys for you to be a championship caliber ball club? Arise came over from the Marlins. Love him. He's kind of a Tony Gwynnish at the top of the lineup. And he seems like he's a good dude. He's got that energy. He's got that good energy, that fun energy that people like to be around him. You got the star in Tatis and Machado. Give me your take on this offense. What they need to do. What the keys to get to that postseason and get deep into that postseason.
Yeah, I think when Mike Schilt took over and brought in Victor Rodriguez, the hitting coach, I think the mantra became, let's get back to line drives. Petco's a pretty big yard. Let's just focus on passing the baton, and that's essentially what our lineup comes down to. It starts with a rise at the top. And you get Tatis. Profar, like I said, has been kind of a godsend. Machado's streaky. He can go and carry you for a week or two, and then kind of disappear there for a little bit. Camposano, the catcher, started off pretty well. He's hit a pretty big skid here. Kim has been off to a slow start. I think he's been pretty disappointing on the offensive side so far. Bogart's going down, like you said. I mean, we're fortunate that we can cover that kind of an injury with Cronenworth, and now with Arise. I think Arise plays a pretty good first base from what I've seen. People have talked to him being a little bit of a down defender at second base. So yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Bogarts. I think if in the heart of hearts, if you were to ask, Schulte and a couple of our guys, I think they may have kept Bogarts at shortstop going into the year. Much to your point, where Bogarts is a great guy, a leader. Coming from a big organization like the Red Sox, I feel like he felt like he was the captain of the infield at shortstop, and he's a team guy. He's like, absolutely, I'll go to second base, but I think down deep, he struggled with that a little bit. And so it'll be interesting. Kim's a free agent at the end of the year. And, I think he's going to have a pretty big market. So if you don't sign him, maybe you slide Bogarts back to short. And, Bogarts is a good fielder. He catches and makes the play on every ball hit to him. He's not as flashy as Kim. He's not going to have huge range. But to your point, if you've got Cronenworth at second, who's got big range, and you got Machado, who's a Gold Glover at third, you can position a guy like Bogarts and protect him there a little bit. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm not the GM, obviously, but I think the offense, we could use a little bit more power. There's no doubt about it. And I think that will come. Machado's only got 5 home runs this year. If he's what's that on pace for 15. He's going to get to his 30.
Right.
He does it every year. So we'll see. Hopefully, Profar can sustain what he's doing. He's having a much better year than he's ever had. Now those years happen. I had a year where basically everything I hit fell in from start to finish, and I think he's having one of those years where he's just in confidence. As you get hits, man, you feel great in the box, and he looks great. So we'll see. But we just got to stay consistent. We put the ball. We don't punch out a lot, which I like. In the scheme of things, I mean, we punch out a lot in terms of what if we were playing in our era, but in terms of the game,
Right.
Yeah. In terms of now where we are, we don't punch out a lot in terms of the rest of the league. But yeah, it's a fun. I think it's a fun offense to watch because you do have a lot of contact guys, and you can string hits together. We had 11 base hits in 1 inning on Saturday. Which is just unbelievable. So it's fun, but you need that 3-run homer once in a while to either get a lead or take a lead back. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think Machado, usually the great players, and at the end of the day, you can flip over that bubblegum card, especially when they're in that sweet spot of their career. And they're pretty much, there's going to be some down years. You're going to have some plus years, but usually it's going to fall in right around where their averages are. You saw it, and you just saw him come through town. He's already got, now I think he's got 21 or 22 home runs. Aaron Judge got off to a real slow start. And people,
Yep.
he's hit 210 with 6 homers. He's got 21 in the blink of an eye. The great players, in the end, the numbers will be there. To me, has and always will be the key to that offense is you got to get Tatis to play like that superstar that he's built to be, for that team to really get to that next level. We'll see. I like the team. I think it's a postseason team, and as we mentioned at the top, you get to that postseason nowadays. That's all you got to do is get there, and you got a shot. You got a shot.
Yeah.
And then who's
Yeah, I
hot
mean,
at the right time?
you're right. I mean, in a 5-game series, you throw, Cease and Darvish, and maybe either Musgrove, or if King is hot at the time, and that's pretty good. And you get, I think in the postseason, making contact and having good hitters plays. The runs are down, and in the postseason typically because you're facing good pitching. And I think that's the one thing we do pretty well. We hit decent pitching pretty well because we make contact.
All right, on to the last, and then I'll let you go. Looking at your career, you started in Milwaukee, uh, Wall of Honor. You were honored there. That was what years were that? I'm trying to think here. Oh, 95 to 02. 02, you move over to San Diego. You play through San Diego 05, Boston, Houston for a couple years. You finish up with LA.
Yep.
A couple All-Stars. You talk about that great year you had. You got 208 hits. That always pops out to me because I did it one time like yourself, and man, it felt like I got a lot of hits that year. When you
Oh,
get
man.
that many, you hit 335 with 208 hits. That was 2004. Pretty unbelievable. But I want to talk to you about your career and moving around. We had it kind of parallels mine a little bit as far as moving around. I started off in Seattle, but I went to Cincinnati. I remember, Low, I was a young player. I was in Seattle,
Hmm.
and I got traded to the Reds. After, man, Lou Piniella and myself had gone round and round, and I'd finally kind of established myself as, okay, I'm a big leaguer now. And it's like, yay. I get a phone call and it says, Booney, you've been traded to the Cincinnati Reds. And the first thing that went through my mind is all that. And now I have to do it again in the new league with a new manager, new group of players. I got to prove to them. Now I went to Cincinnati. It worked out great. I had 5 years there, enjoyed most of my time. I went on to Atlanta, and it's like, oh man, I get to go to a World Series possibly here. I did get to go. We got whooped by the Yankees. Then I moved on to San Diego for a year, and then back to Lou Piniella and the Seattle Mariners for the remainder of my career. Where at first it was like, oh, a new big ballpark, even though I was a veteran player. But once you hone in, it was the greatest time of my career and some of the funnest times of my life in Seattle. I want your perspective on how it was for you moving on from Milwaukee. You had a lot of success there, going to San Diego, then moving again, moving again. Did you have any of that angst, even when you were a veteran player? Like, all right, new team, new group of guys. We kind of know each other by then. When you're 10 years in the big leagues, you kind of
Yeah.
know the guys you played against for years. But how was it for you moving around from team to team? And was there always that expectation, or, man, I want to do good for my new ball club?
No question. Yeah. There's anxiety. There's a, you want to, prove that the trade was worth it and that they got a good player. I spent 8 years in Milwaukee, and I really only had a couple years where I was like the starting, either shortstop. Well, I was shortstop really. I didn't move over to second really till I went to the Padres. But where I was starting player, we had, I had 400 at bats one year at first base in Milwaukee, for example. It just seemed like I was the utility guy out of spring training, and then something would happen, either Jaha or Nielsen or one of these guys would go down. I'd end up playing, getting 400 or 500 at bats. In fact, Josh Stein, our assistant GM, came up with this. I don't know where he found it, but it turns out I'm the only player in Major League history to play 200 games at all four infield positions: third, second, short, or first. Which I'm like, wow, okay. I tried to shake that utility label my whole career. I guess I can't do that now.
Now it's a badge of honor.
Yeah, exactly. And so what really kind of resurrected my career towards the end of Milwaukee. I'd had some injuries. I was hurt I broke a foot and a leg and all kinds of stuff. And I got traded to Houston in September of 2002. And talking about wanting to fit in. I mean, they were in a playoff race, and it was guys I knew, but not that well. It was Osmus, it was Bagwell, it was Biggio, it was Lance Berkman. And here I am coming over, and Jimmy Williams, first day, all right, you're leading off playing shortstop. I'm like, all right, here we go. And that September, was just great for me. I mean, everything I hit, fell in. I mean, I think I don't know, I hit 438 for the month or something, and that really kind of resurrected my career. Then I went on, had the years in San Diego, and obviously loved it enough here that we've raised our kids here. We've lived here for 20 years, much like you have, and a lot of former Padres do. And then going to Boston, I mean, man, that was fun. I wanted to stay there desperately, but they had some guy named, Dustin Pedroia coming back who they felt that they liked, and they obviously made the right call there. So, and finished up with LA. That was fun. That was my childhood team. Playing for Joe Torre was great. I was a role player there. We made the NLCS that year, lost to the Phillies. Had Osmus with me there. We're great friends, and so yeah. I mean, I'm so thankful for all the opportunities I've had and the relationships I've had, and then being able to kind of move right into the Padres front office and staying connected with that team. It's really been a good ride, and looking forward to the next chapter as well. Now our kids are out. They're in college, and one's graduating, and so big changes coming. But so thrilled the way things turned out.
Mark Loretta, I appreciate you jumping on the Bret Boone podcast. It's been a lot of fun. I'm sure I'll see you at the yard a couple more times
Yeah, man.
this
Thanks for
summer.
having
And,
me
and
on.
and best of luck. I think this team's a good team. It just gotta little something to get them going. As of now, I think they're in the playoffs, so we'll see. But thanks for coming on, Mark. For those of you out there watching the Boone podcast on YouTube, we're new to YouTube. I appreciate you tuning in. For those of you listening to the Odyssey podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast, until next time, keep it here. Thanks, Lo.
Thanks, Booney. Cheers.